We were never supposed to fight back. That's what they thought when they came down from the skis with their shining armor and voices like thunder. The Zarathi, that's what they called themselves, some ancient name from some ancient empire that stretched across galaxies. They claimed they were our gods, that we were created to serve them, and for a while most of us believed it. It started with the skis turning red, not from war, not at first, but from their ships, hundreds of them floating like metal gods above Earth's major cities. They didn't shoot, they just hovered there, casting shadows that stretched for miles. Then came the broadcast in every language known to man at the exact same time: "You were made to serve, you have forgotten your place, we are here to remind you." It was calm, cold, no emotion, but it hit like a hammer. People dropped to their knees in fear, not because they were convinced, but because when someone appears out of nowhere, shuts down your satellites, turns off your nukes like flipping a light switch, you listen. You obey. They called it the Restoration. Their soldiers weren't like anything we'd ever seen: tall, sleek, armored from head to toe in silver, with eyes that glowed like dying suns. And they didn't need to yell, they didn't bark orders, they just looked at you and you felt something inside you go still, like your will was shutting down. In the first month, they took control of everything. Governments surrendered, militaries were disarmed, resistance crushed, not with blood, at least not at first, but with silence. They erased records, history, leadership. It was like Earth was being rewritten in real time. Our flags came down, their symbol, a spiral with a blade through it, went up. They didn't kill randomly, that's what made them scarier. They picked, chose engineers, scientists, thinkers. Anyone they saw as useful was taken, re-educated, they said. We never saw those people again, and if you fought back, if you raised your hand, your entire bloodline disappeared. Not just you, everyone with your name. My brother, he was one of the first to disappear. He hacked a broadcast tower and tried to tell the world the truth, that the Zarathi weren't gods, that they had been beaten before, that humanity wasn't some failed project, they just feared what we could become. He said something else too, something that stuck with me even after the tower exploded and half of Chicago went dark. They want us to kneel so they can forget the one species that made them blind. I didn't even understand it at the time, but I remembered it. For months, I laid low like everyone else, wore the gray uniform, ate the rationed food, repeated their chants during the daily obedience cycle. And all the while I watched, I listened, and I waited. They thought they broke us, they thought they erased our past. But you can't delete the fire in a human soul. You can bury it, smother it, but it's still there, and when it finds air, it explodes. I found that air in the ruins of an old library in Ghana. That's where I met her, Leon. She was barely 20, small, quiet, but when she spoke, it was like the earth paused to listen. She was the daughter of a linguist and a coder. Her father had hidden fragments of old human history in coded books scattered across continents. Leon had found 3, I had found 2. Together, we realized the truth. The Zarathi didn't create us. They enslaved us once, thousands of years ago, but we fought them off, wiped them from our sky. They erased that chapter from our memory, but not completely. Leon showed me something else, an ancient symbol older than the spiral of the Zarathi. It looked like a shattered crown with fire behind it. "You see this," she said. "This was humanity's flag when we burned their empire down the first time. And in that moment, I knew we weren't just survivors, we were the reckoning. We didn't start with guns, we didn't have any. The Zarathi had stripped the world clean of weapons, explosives, even sharp tools in some regions. But what they forgot, what they could never understand, was that humans never needed machines to start revolutions. We just needed a reason." Leon and I kept moving, city to city, ruins to ruins, following clues her father had buried years before. It wasn't just about history anymore. It was a blueprint, a map of what we once were and what we could become again. Each location unlocked a part of the past. Cairo held transcripts of the first rebellion. New Delhi had coordinates to ancient underground labs where we once experimented with gene-enhancing tech. In Sao Paulo, we found the last piece. A vault hidden beneath the city, sealed with old Earth code, DNA locked to descendants of those who fought in the first rebellion. It opened when I touched it. Inside weren't weapons, not in the traditional sense, but what we found was far more dangerous: memory. Databanks of human history scrubbed clean by the Zarathi. Videos, audio, journals, evidence that they had tried this before, that they had failed before, and that we had made them blind. We weren't just some backwater species that crawled out of the dirt. We were the reason their home world burned, the reason their empire shattered, the reason they feared Earth. But this time they came prepared, wiser, quieter, and more methodical. I sat in that vault for hours, reading journal after journal. Names like General Yara the Unbroken, Engineer Kofi Mum, a pilot named Hester who once crashed a starfighter into the heart of their planetary core just to make a statement. And I cried. I wasn't ashamed, because in that silence, surrounded by the ghosts of a forgotten rebellion, I realized something important. The Zarathi didn't want us to remember because memory is rebellion's sharpest weapon. When we came out of that vault, something had changed in us. We were no longer scavengers of the past. We were soldiers of it, and there were others like us hidden all over the world. People who remembered pieces, who saw cracks in the Zarathi story, farmers, teachers, mechanics, a 13-year-old boy who built a signal jammer out of scrap and old radio parts, a grandmother in Istanbul who had handwritten the Constitution from memory and taught it to children like bedtime stories. So we started building, not weapons, networks. We used old code, hidden frequencies the Zarathi couldn't detect. Leon taught them how to encrypt in patterns based on Earth's old poetry, rhythm and rhyme as code. It was genius. I taught them how to move without being seen, how to speak without words, how to look a Zarathi in the eyes and think only of silence. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were organizing. Of course, they noticed eventually. A resistance like that doesn't stay quiet forever, but by then it was too late for them. The seeds were already planted and the roots ran too deep. The Zarathi started retaliating, first with arrests, then disappearances, then public executions. They wanted to scare us into obedience again, but that just made the fire spread. The turning point came in Tokyo. A girl named Im hijacked a Zarathi patrol drone and used it to project the old human flag, the shattered crown with fire behind it, onto the side of one of their control towers. Live, global. They tried to shut it down, but we jammed their signal feeds, and for the first time in a century, Earth saw its own symbol light up the sky. The Zarathi called it an act of war. We called it a reminder. They came down harder after that, cracked down on entire cities, turned parts of London and Jakarta into surveillance zones. Anyone even whispering rebellion was vaporized. But it didn't matter anymore because we weren't afraid. We remembered, and a species that remembers is a species that doesn't kneel. We knew war was coming. We didn't have the fleets, we didn't have the guns, we didn't have the armor. But we had the truth, and that would be the first thing we'd use to erase their legacy. They hit us hard after Tokyo, not with missiles, not with bombs, but with silence. The kind that strangles your hope. Entire cities went dark overnight, not a power outage, obliteration. One minute they were there, buzzing with life, the next, a ripple of soundless energy flattened everything. People, buildings, history, no fire, no smoke, just absence. They called it the purging. We lost millions in days, but not just lives. We lost voices, leaders, thinkers, the brave ones who stood in the light when the rest of us were still crawling through shadows. Im was one of them. The girl who showed us the flag, they caught her, didn't kill her. Worse. They paraded her across the world on giant hollow screens, forced her to kneel and stripped the flag from her clothes. Then they made her thank them word for word. I watched it live from a safe house outside Nairobi, fists clenched so tight my knuckles split. Leon cried not because Im broke, but because she didn't. Her voice cracked, her body shook, but her eyes burned like the sun. And that's when I realized what terrified the Zarathi most, defiance that doesn't die. They could erase cities, rewrite laws, even shatter our families, but they couldn't kill the one thing that made us human, that quiet little fire in our chest that says, no, not today. So we changed the plan. We stopped hiding. We split into cells, small, mobile, invisible when we needed to be, explosive when we had to be. We didn't fight like an army. We fought like memory, everywhere at once, impossible to kill. We hijacked their supply lines, hacked their drones mid-flight, used old subway tunnels to move between cities. We learned fast that they weren't as perfect as they claimed. Their tech was advanced, sure, but it was designed for control, not chaos. They expected order, schedules, predictability, but we were humans. Our chaos was our strategy. One day, a kid in Mexico City broadcasted a speech over their emergency frequency, 8 minutes long. He quoted Martin Luther King, Mandela, and his own mother. The signal reached 5 continents before they shut it down. We heard that kid disappeared the next day. But the speech, it was already memorized. That same week, an old miner in Siberia took down a Zarathi armored unit by collapsing a frozen tunnel. They said he was 73 years old. He smiled right before the blast. Acts like these weren't big in the scale of war, but they weren't meant to be. They were reminders that we were still here, still breathing, still refusing to kneel. I started leading a cell of my own. We called ourselves Ashes of Crown, after the flag, our motto, you erase, we remember. Every time the Zarathi wiped a place off the map, we etched its name into walls, data logs, graffiti, even our skin. Whole cities were inked into our arms. The memories they tried to delete became the very maps we used to fight back. One night in the ruins of Berlin, we got our first real victory, a data vault deep underground guarded by an elite squad of Zarathi enforcers. Nobody knew what was inside, but the whispers said it was where they stored memory. The kind they feared, proof, evidence. The kind of truth you can't burn. It took 6 of us, only 3 made it out. What we found inside didn't just change the war. It changed everything. There were files going back millennia, scans of species they'd conquered, erased, rewritten, civilizations that had once rivaled theirs but got buried under lies and submission. And among those files, a dossier labeled Homo sapiens genetic threat. Inside it was the truth they tried hardest to bury. Humanity wasn't a slave race. We were their equals once, then their rivals, then their conquerors. We didn't kneel. They did, and they've been trying to reverse history ever since. We uploaded the file to every hidden node on Earth's internet, broadcast it across black frequencies, embedded it in music, memes, video games, anything humans consumed. They couldn't stop it. The truth spread faster than their censorship could catch it. And just like that, their perfect silence shattered. They thought fear would keep us quiet, but they forgot the one thing about humans you can never erase. We remember everything. By the time the truth reached every corner of Earth, it was no longer just a resistance. It was a reckoning. People woke up differently. You could feel it in the streets, hear it in the way footsteps echoed through ruined cities. The weight of fear had shifted, not gone, but no longer paralyzing. We were still outgunned, outnumbered, but now we had something they couldn't match, righteous fury wrapped in memory. The Zarathi didn't speak for days after the leak. No announcements, no threats, just silence, like they were stunned we'd pulled it off, or maybe afraid of what came next. Because now the world knew they were not our gods, they were our prey. Revenge didn't become our mission. It became instinct. My cell grew fast. People came to us with fire in their veins, engineers, hackers, artists, everyone found a role. The best fighter we had was a ballet instructor from Johannesburg. The deadliest sniper, a blind girl from Manila who could read seismic shifts in the ground like a second language. Humans adapt, that's our curse and our gift. We weren't rebuilding armies, we were evolving them. We learned how to hijack their own technology. Their language, once a mystery, was now being decoded by teenagers with neural implants and a grudge. Their energy weapons, thought to be DNA-locked, turned out to have flaws. And guess what? Rage is a better key than science. I still remember the first time we turned their own weapon against them. Logos. A patrol squad spotted one of our operatives tagging a building with the broken crown symbol. She should have been dead in seconds, but her backup was waiting. A redirected pulse cannon, one blast, 3 armored Zarathi vaporized. We didn't run, we watched them burn. From that moment on, retaliation became revolution. Cities that once echoed with silence began to hum with life again. Not normal life but purpose, organized chaos, secret hospitals in abandoned schools, drone factories beneath cathedrals, black market data hubs built from church organs and rusted cars. The Zarathi scanned for weapons, but what they couldn't detect were ideas, and ideas were spreading like wildfire. Some of the old government officials tried to crawl out from their holes, the ones who had collaborated in the early days, licking boots to save their own skins. They offered apologies, alliances. We didn't want them. The new Earth didn't have space for cowards. Then came the broadcast that shook the stars. Leon, she hijacked one of their own orbital transmitters. I didn't even know she was planning it. I had just finished a recon run in Algiers when I got the message. Turn your eyes to the sky. I looked up and there she was, not hiding, not whispering, not begging, just standing in front of the shattered crown, wearing the same gray uniform we were forced to wear for years, holding a piece of a burnt Zarathi banner in her hand. She said 4 words, "This planet remembers everything." And then she lit it on fire. That signal reached not just Earth but beyond. We know this because it didn't take long for something new to arrive. Not Zarathi reinforcements, but a delegation. Different ships, darker, sleeker. We still don't know where they came from, but one thing was clear: they weren't here to rule, they were here to watch. Something about Leon's message made them pay attention. Maybe they remembered the First War, maybe they lost people too, or maybe they were just afraid to see history repeating itself. Whatever the reason, their presence changed the Zaratha's tone. Suddenly their threats turned to negotiations, demands became requests. They offered peace, surrender, a partnership. We spat in their face. You don't kneel to someone who spent centuries lying to your face. You bury them, and we were just getting started. They tried a different tactic after Leon's broadcast, mercy. Public apologies, offers of reunification, hollow promises dripping in the same rot they used to poison our history. They claimed they'd been misled by former leaders, that a rogue faction had twisted the purpose of their mission. Suddenly, the spiral and blade symbol disappeared from the screens. A new insignia replaced it, a glowing olive branch wrapped around a planet. It was a joke, a sick, desperate joke. We didn't need proof it was a lie. We felt it the way you feel a predator's breath on your neck right before it bites. This wasn't surrender, this was bait. A slow, calculated attempt to calm us down, to make us sit still again, to make us forget the fire. But humans don't forget, not anymore. Still, their message split people. You could feel the tension in the resistance. Some wanted peace, real peace. They were tired of hiding, of dying, of watching their loved ones get erased like typos. I understood that. Hell, I felt that. But we weren't fighting for peace. We were fighting for truth. And there's no peace with those who built their empire on our silence. I saw it all start to crack in Dublin. The Zarathi staged a cooperative event, letting humans enter their zones freely for the first time. Free food, medicine, even shelter. Some went not because they trusted them, but because they were starving, tired, lost. Only half of them came back, the others gone, like always. Only this time we had eyes on the inside. One of our scouts, a deaf girl named Mina, wore a hacked cloak suit that scrambled their sensors. She followed the supply trucks out of the welcome zones. She found mass graves. That night, Leon called a summit. No hiding, no aliases. Every resistance leader that could make it came, from the Arctic Circle to the ruins of Rio. We met in an old museum in Nairobi, its roof still scarred from a Zarathi orbital strike years ago. We gathered under broken bones of Earth's ancient dinosaurs. Fitting, considering we were about to decide if we would become the next extinction. The debate wasn't easy. Some argued for a truce, said we'd made our point, said the new watchers in orbit meant we had leverage now that we could negotiate. Others wanted full war, wipe the Zarathi from our skis, burn their memory, use their tech, and take the fight to them. And then Leon stood up. She didn't shout, didn't pound the table. She just looked at us with those eyes that had seen too much and said, if we let them stay, our children will kneel again. That was it, no speeches, no drama, just truth. We voted that night, unanimous, no surrender, no truce, no survivors. The war changed after that. We stopped reacting and started planning coordinated attacks city by city, region by region. We used the old satellite grids they thought were long dead, reactivated by a kid named Juno who used to repair washing machines. Our code ran through the stars now, human code. We took back Cairo in 3 days, New York in 5. Paris fell without a fight, locals had already sabotaged the power nodes. The Zarathi began pulling out, not retreating, retreating is human. They vanished, slipping into the dark like a monster hiding under the bed. Again, but we weren't kids anymore. We knew how to fight in the dark now. That's when we learned about Arc Station 1, their last outpost floating in low Earth orbit, the origin of the purging beams, the command node of the memory suppression grid, the final link to the system that made erasing cities so clean, so easy. If we took it down, they wouldn't be able to hide anymore. No more silence, no more vanishing acts, just them and us face to face. Arc Station 1 wasn't a myth anymore. It was real, orbiting just outside our reach, cloaked behind a satellite shadow network feeding commands to their remaining forces on Earth. Every purging beam, every psychic broadcast, every digital wipe, they all came from there. It wasn't just a command post. It was their last stronghold, their bunker of lies. If we wanted to end this, we had to burn it down. But getting to it, that was another story. We didn't have ships, not like theirs. The Zarathi made sure humanity's space programs were dismantled in the early days. NASA, ESA, JAXA scrubbed clean. Every orbital launch pad was bombed or sealed under their tech. They thought if they locked the sky, they locked our future. But we had ghosts, old engineers, retired astronauts, blacklisted pilots who still carried scars from the first invasion. They came out of hiding, dusted off ancient blueprints, opened underground bunkers that hadn't seen daylight in 50 years. Leon gathered them in a place called Wadi al-Hittan, the Valley of the Whales, once an archaeological site in Egypt. Now it became our launch cradle. And me, I was on the short list, not because I was the best pilot, we didn't have the luxury of best, but I had one thing the others didn't. I had seen Arc Station 1 up close back when I was captured for a week, back when they tried to break me. I was held in orbit. That memory, that cold silence of space, the hum of alien machinery never left me. I knew the layout. I knew the smell of their recycled air. I knew the way the Zarathi moved inside their sanctum. So they chose me to lead the mission. We called it Project Echo, named after the one thing the Zarathi could never kill, our voice bouncing back. The ship was built from scraps, an old suborbital shuttle reinforced with stolen Zarathi plating. The engine modified from an old mining drill designed to punch through rock, now rigged to push us past the stratosphere. The cockpit wasn't elegant, just wires, duct tape, and adrenaline, but it flew. Barely. We only had one shot. We launched at dawn, the sun rising behind us as we broke the atmosphere. I remember looking down at Earth, scarred, bruised, but still turning, still alive. And for the first time in my life, I felt small in a way that didn't make me afraid. I felt part of something bigger, older, humanity. Arc Station came into view like a silver tumor in the black. Elegant, silent, rotting with secrets. They didn't detect us at first, too fast, too crude, too human. We used it, broke through their outer defense ring, attached magnetically to a maintenance hatch, and forced our way in. The others spread out, 6 of us in total, each assigned to a different power node. If we could overload the core, we'd take the whole station down. But the Zarathi were waiting, not in the halls, not with guns in our minds. The moment we crossed the threshold, they activated the psychic field. It was how they'd kept people obedient all these years, whispers that crawled inside your thoughts, telling you to give up, to kneel, to forget why you ever fought. I almost dropped right there, but then I heard a voice, my brother's. Not really him, just the memory of him, what he said before they took him. They want us to kneel so they can forget the one species that made them bleed. That broke the spell. One by one we planted the charges, fought through drones, enforcers, even sections of the station trying to collapse around us. We lost 2, Yusef and Mara, gone before I could blink. I didn't have time to grieve, not yet. Leon's voice came through the comm just as I reached the core. We uploaded the truth again, everyone's watching, you know what to do. I set the detonator, 30 seconds, but I didn't run, I stayed. Looked around at their sacred halls, the birthplace of every lie they ever told, and then I whispered, "This is for Earth." I pressed the button. They said space was silent, that there's no sound in the vacuum, no echo of explosions. But they were wrong. When Arc Station 1 went up in flames, the world heard it, not with ears, but in the way gravity shifted inside us, the way the sky seemed brighter the next day, the way people stepped outside and looked up for the first time in generations without flinching. I should have died up there, I wanted to. I thought pressing that detonator was my last act, my final defiance. But fate, it seems, had other plans, or maybe humanity just doesn't let go that easy. I woke up in a bed wrapped in nanofiber sheets, lungs filled with recycled oxygen, IVs buzzing in my arms. A makeshift medbay inside a cargo pod earthside. The doctor, a wiry woman named Ashad, just grinned when she saw me open my eyes. "Your dumbass fell from the sky," she said, and bounced. Turns out one of the secondary pods launched itself seconds before the explosion, automated escape sequence. Leon must have programmed it in just in case. I was blown clear, unconscious, barely breathing, floating above Earth until a recovery drone reeled me in like a broken satellite. I lived, but Arc Station 1 didn't. It shattered into orbit, bleeding metal and flame, raining pieces of itself across the atmosphere like burning confessions. Some fragments didn't burn. They landed in the Pacific, in the Sahara, in the ruins of Toronto. People scavenged the wreckage like sacred relics, pieces of the lie, now proof of the truth. And the signal didn't stop, because Leon was smarter than all of us. She uploaded everything, the station's archives, their confessions, their files on Earth, on other enslaved worlds. The broadcast ran for 7 days straight on every channel, overriding even the deepest firewalls. Billions saw what the Zarathi did. Billions more saw what we did. And then the ripple began. First, it was the off-world colonies, Mars, Europa, Titan, settlements they said were barren. They weren't. They were prisons, human outposts built and forgotten. Those people rose up, sent messages back, "We remember." Then the alien races, the ones we thought were part of the enemy. Turns out they were just as broken, kept in line by the same lies. Some were hybrids, others entirely different species, but one thing connected us. We all carried the scars of the Spiral and Blade Empire. And when they saw Earth fight back, they followed. It wasn't war anymore, it was collapse. The Zarathi tried to regroup, regain control, but the infection of memory spread faster than they could stop it. Resistance networks went galactic. Former slaves became teachers. Former enforcers turned their weapons on their masters. One by one, their empires fell not to armies but to truth. And back on Earth, everything changed. There were no governments to restore, no nations to rebuild. The old world was too far gone for that, but something better was rising in its place. Cities cleaned out their ruins not to erase them but to preserve them. Museums were built out of bomb shelters, schools out of old bunkers. Every child was taught not just math and science but memory. The world united not because of hope but because of trauma, because we all remembered what forgetting cost us. As for Leon, she disappeared after the final broadcast. Some say she died. Others say she went into deep space, searching for the other species still under the spiral. I don't know the truth, but in every city now, someone's carved her face into the walls beside the crown of fire, beside the words, "We do not kneel." I still travel, not as a soldier anymore, but as a witness. I walk through towns that were once battlegrounds, now filled with music and gardens and laughter. I tell children about the Zarathi, about I Am who showed us the flag, about Yusef and Mara who gave their lives to light up the sky, about Leon who gave us back our memory. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they get angry, but they always listen, and that's what matters, because this time we'll remember. No more monuments to conquerors, no more statues of liars. Just names etched into stone and story, names that won't be erased again. And above every doorway painted in ash or gold, you'll find those same 4 words. This planet remembers everything. I used to think war would end with an explosion, a grand moment, a bang so loud it silenced everything after. But that's not how it ended. It ended with quiet, not the silence of fear or of death or the stifling stillness the Zarathi once used to control us. No, this was a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes when the shouting stops, when the lies have all burned and there's nothing left but the truth standing naked in the ashes. A stillness earned through fire. That was the world we woke up in. The Zarathi didn't vanish overnight. Their fleets limped away, scattered, their command structure in shambles. We tracked their transmissions, faint, desperate, calling out to remnants of their crumbling empire, but no one answered. The galaxy had moved on. Memory had caught up with them. We didn't chase them. We didn't need to. They would rot in the shadows of the legacy they tried to bury. Our fight was no longer about killing what remained. It was about building something stronger than what we lost. And that wasn't easy. The damage they left behind wasn't just in the buildings they leveled or the lives they ended. It was in the minds of people, generations raised to doubt themselves, to bow their heads, to think obedience was survival. There were still humans who flinched when they heard static over a speaker, who instinctively dropped to their knees when a shadow passed overhead. So we taught, we built schools in places that used to be camps. We filled walls with the real history, drawings, songs, memories etched into stone, steel, and skin. Survivors became teachers. Children became archivists. Everyone carried a piece of the truth. I helped rebuild in Logos for a time, a city that once burned bright before the purging, now rising from the dust. Not skyscrapers this time, no need for towers to prove we were strong. Just homes, libraries, theaters, places where people could breathe. I spent my days with the young ones, most of them too young to remember the Zarathi clearly. That was dangerous. They hadn't seen the way we bent, hadn't felt the shame of forgetting who we were, so I made sure they learned. Every night I told them stories not of war but of defiance. I told them about IAM's broadcast in Tokyo, about Leon's final message to the stars, about the old woman in Istanbul who recited human rights like sacred scripture. I told them about the bunker where I found the first real proof that we were never meant to kneel. They listened with wide eyes and clenched fists, not out of fear, but because they understood, even at their age, that memory is sacred. Some nights the stars above us seemed to shift. We knew others were watching, not enemies, not invaders, but witnesses, those alien races once shackled like us. They sent messages encoded in light, sound, art. We began to communicate cautiously, carefully, not alliances yet, just recognition, a shared scar. The broken crown became a universal symbol, not of Earth's dominance, but of survival. One day, years later, I got a message, a simple ping on an old channel I hadn't used since the war. It came from deep space, encrypted in a style only a few knew. I opened it expecting nothing, but it was from her, Leon. No video, just audio, just her voice. "I'm alive," she said. "I found them, they remember too. That's all. No coordinates, no requests, just confirmation." Like she wanted me to know that the fire hadn't gone out, that somewhere in the black beyond our system, truth still burned. I sat with that message for a long time. I never replied, didn't need to, because by then Earth had changed. A governing council had formed, not of politicians, but of people, survivors, scientists, artists. Each continent had a voice, not perfect but real. Disagreements happened, sure, we were human after all, but no one was erased, no one silenced. We created something the Zarathi couldn't understand, a messy, flawed, beautiful democracy made from memory and scars. Statues went up not of leaders but of moments, a girl lighting a banner on fire, a boy with a hacked drone, a grandmother teaching children under rubble. No names on the plaques, just the phrase, "This is what resistance looks like." Time passed, I aged. The fire in my chest, the one that carried me through so many fights, dimmed not extinguished, just settled like an ember in a hearth instead of a wildfire. I spent my final years walking the earth. I saw the ice return to Greenland where once the skis burned. I watched coral bloom again in the Pacific where orbital debris had fallen like rain. I visited the ruins of Berlin, now a global archive where people came to touch the bullet holes and feel the weight of the past. And I returned to Chicago, where my brother made his final stand. I sat on the edge of the old broadcast tower ruins, now turned into a memorial garden, and whispered his words into the wind one last time. They want us to kneel so they can forget the one species that made them bleed. Not anymore, we remembered. And that memory had become our greatest weapon, our shield, our legacy. Not conquest, not domination, just the eternal defiance of a species that refused to bow. As I faded into the dusk of my final days, I found peace in one truth. The Zarathi erased history, but we wrote it back with blood, with fire, and with voices that refused to be silenced. And long after I'm gone, long after the last soldier lays down their weapon, one truth will echo forever in the bones of this planet. We did not kneel. We erased their legacy and we remembered everything.